And would you look at that, Lagos? It is gone past 7:30 right here on your Love Music Love Life station. You're tuned in to Smooth Breakfast with Kade Baker.
And Shopper Martins. Good morning.
And for the next half hour, we have got our two analysts in the studio. And I have to say, it's been a while since I've seen this face and this hair. Tunde Okupe, welcome.
Welcome, hi Shopper. Good
So great to
morning.
see you.
He
So
Almost
great
says
said
to
welcome
welcome to
too.
you too.
I know,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
great to have you on as an analyst, and of course, Mr. C, new acquaintance, but that doesn't spoil the depth of the relationship. How you doing, Mr. C?
Good morning, Shokbad. Good morning, Kade. Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Lagos.
And Nigeria and world. Thank you. I'm global like that. All right, so of course we want your messages in as we go through the news topics for the day. So make sure you send your WhatsApp messages in to 0809 440 And boy, do we have some stories for you. Starting in with This Day newspaper, which has this headline for us: Nigeria must return to agriculture for economic sustainability. Federal government insists, and by federal government we have the president who actually said that it is Nigerians who must return to agriculture in order to become a self-sustaining nation. Now, the president spoke recently on national television in an interview. As said, agriculture could sustain the Nigerian economy if properly harnessed. And I quote, only 2.5% of our arable land is currently being utilized, and we need to take advantage of our vast arable land to produce what can feed Nigerians and other countries of the world. Now, he went on to say that he understood the difficulties and pains that Nigerians are passing through, to the extent that the majority can't feed themselves, but he insisted that we must embrace agriculture to alleviate our sufferings and pains. And Mr. C, this is not the first time the president has focused on agriculture and agriculture being the mainstay or the potential mainstay of the Nigerian economy. But what would you say to this?
Okay, thank you, Shokbad. Well, the president, in my opinion, is partly correct, but partly he's incorrect, and I'll explain why. Now, it is true that agriculture is one of the ways through which Nigeria will become economically sustainable, economically relevant in the years and the decades to come. However, it's not the only way. We have seen through, for example, the entertainment sector, music and film, that there is great potential in that sector of the Nigerian economy for growth. There's also great prospects for growth in telecoms. There's prospect for growth in power. So yes, agriculture is one of the means, but it's not the only means. Now, when he says only 2.5% of our arable land is being utilized, he was quoting Mr. Doing Solami, who he recently appointed as a chief economist to the president. Now, the question is, why have we only used 2.5? It's not a single answer. So one, the lack of technology, proper funding, but the big elephant in the room, insecurity.
Now, I was going to say this, Mr. C. I mean, when we talk about focusing on what industry we're going to say, oh, this is what's going to bring Nigeria out of our dependence on oil and gas. Um, Agriculture, yes, sounds interesting, but then again, when we look at what we would have to overcome to be able to rely on that, such as insecurity, such as making sure our exports are up to scratch, because we've heard so many news items, or we've seen so many news items coming back saying that the European Union countries, America as well, has rejected our food exports. I mean, what would you say?
So the truth of the matter is the impediments to us becoming successful in agriculture are impediments that can be successfully overcome.
Mm.
Now, Nigerians, the average Nigerian wants to break the law. The EU standards, the American standards are there for anyone who can read and write and can comprehend written English.
Mm.
Now, it's the reluctance to adhere to lay down regulations, lay down rules that gets us into trouble. But in the same vein, there are Nigerians who are exporting stuff regularly to the European markets, to the North American markets, who are complying with the rules, and they're seeing great increases in growth and revenue. So the truth of the matter is this: if we can increase funding to the average farmer, because it's not spirits that are going to utilize this land,
Mm.
the Nigerians like you and I.
Mm.
If we can get the right technology in, give them funds to help them, but above all, solve insecurity. Insecurity is not, it's not something that cannot be solved. There's a political will that needs to be applied. These people are not spirits. The people causing the chaos and the mayhem are not spirits. Sheikh Gumi incidentally seems to know some of them. So if they will just lean on intelligence, sit down and do what is required, we can actually become a food, we can actually become a nation that grows a lot of food to the point that we can even export. When our borders were shut down in 2019, we started growing rice. Now we're sustainable when it comes to rice, and I understand we have begun to export rice to neighboring
I'm
countries.
still looking for lake rice, but okay.
So, in conclusion, my thoughts are this: insecurity should be resolved. The government can resolve it. And the late General Sani Abacha is quoted to have said, even though I haven't found the exact quote, that
Yeah.
if
More than 48
insecurity
hours.
lasts more than 48 hours, the government is involved.
And
So then what do you
goes
think?
around.
Okay, no, I mean, so generally on Buhari's comments on agriculture, I mean, so there's this thing about statements being correct or factual, and then when you look at, but then you need to step back and look at the sort of bigger picture and context for them to hold up. So I don't think it was so much an issue as to whether agriculture is important in as part of the national strategy to get us out of our current situation. I think it was more in responses. It was more in response to his question as to how all economic indices had fallen so badly that it was a bit underwhelming for agriculture to be the only response. Now, agriculture can be a focus, but if we mismanage, as we've been mismanaging, economic indices will still be will still be poor. Now, insecurity is essential to fixing the problem, right? But we need to modernize our farming. We really do need to. People do things in a certain way because the systems don't exist. If the technology doesn't exist, our farming is still subsistence level. It needs to change.
All right, thank you very much for that. Real quick, let's move on to our next story. But if you're out there, by the way, and you want to add your 2 cents to our conversation, please send your WhatsApp messages to 0809 444 0981. This one comes from the Punch newspaper. It talks about Kuka's invitation. So someone gloomy for hobnobbing. For hobnobbing with bandits, Christian youths tell the DSS. Now, let me give you a background to this one. So the Christian youths under the aegis of the Christian Association of Nigeria, the Youth Wing, said on Sunday that they would mobilize to join the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, that's Matthew Kuka, in appearing before the Department of State Services. So, I mean, what's your assessment about this today?
Look, it's very simple, or should I say quick to analyze. Maybe I'll save us some time. I mean, generally, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, right? So if Gumi, just as Mr. C alluded earlier, seems to know a lot of
Some of
these bandits, and is very free in his statements. He comes out, he does make a lot of statements and proclamations regarding them, and to the extent that people now kid that he's the minister for bandits
So he knows
affairs.
how to, yeah,
If you understand what I mean.
negotiate with them.
Exactly, right, and seems to speak and on their behalf and be willing to talk about representing them so freely. If that's the case, why should another prominent, in fact, any Nigerian, and not talk of a prominent one, who has demonstrated over the years his belief and his faith in the Nigerian project. Nobody, Kuka doesn't need any introduction, right? I mean, we all know of he's a true statement, but we all remember his participation in the Putu panel as well as regards reconciling the nation and all the other things he said since then. So it shouldn't be a case where he's singled out for special attention or treatment because of the things, and he's essentially just relaying things that he's seeing, things
So
that
could
have
it be
happened.
that, one of the reasons why I was invited by the DSS, and let me quote this, he says one of the reasons why I was by the DSS was Christmas sermon saying that the Nigerian leader has failed to show competence as terrorists, bandits, and other violent criminals embark on a coordinated and relentless rampage across the country. Could it be termed like maybe some of his comments were seen as inciting?
I don't see it as any more inciting than a lot of the other things that we've heard. And the truth is, when I'm not advocating or saying people should be reckless, right, or rebels. But he has, in a sense, what I'm saying, he's just
No, because he's a
relaying.
religious leader, right? And if he does say that, hey, maybe the government has failed, and then they should have done this, they should have done that, then some people could take it as
There-
gospel, and then take matters in their own hands.
Sometimes when you take it like as gospel, you can read gospel yourself, so you say gospel, it's out there,
Okay.
right? He's not really saying anything that is different. For instance, let's take the interview, right, that
Okay.
led to agriculture. The question that led to the response being agriculture, why don't you interpret that as inciting? He essentially said all our indices
But
are
in this
poor,
case, the person
and all
that
our
asked the
indices.
question is not a religious leader that wields power.
It's
And we've talked
a
about this many
journalist.
times.
It's a journalist, and he's asking the president, right? There really isn't any difference, if you ask me.
Okay.
All right, well, we've got messages coming in. Let's hear your thoughts. Austin from Satellite says many Nigerians and even foreigners want to do the farming business, but the problem has been insecurity. Let the federal government stop the killings of farmers in their farms, then there will be enough food for everyone to eat, and farmers will be making some money too, and staying in their farms. We've got this one in. Joseph Mani says, good morning, Freshly Pressed crew. Let the president and comrades make Nigeria work, and things would fall into place without advice or suggestions. See what's happening in the entertainment sector and technology. The people there are working against the odds to give the world something to appreciate them, to appreciate. Let them stop audio achievements, says Joseph. And
Uche comes in to
you
say,
see from Isola says our farmers are being killed and some are dumped in the camps, and the government is looking with closed eyes.
Yinka comes in with the long one. He says, honestly, whenever the president talks about farming and everyone of us, both of us here in Syria, returning to farms, we need to ask him his idea of farming. I just hope it's not hose and cutlass kind of farming, because the world has moved beyond that. And it goes on to talk about a number of other things, basically. But let's move on to our next story.
All right, got this one in. We're going to go to the health side of things, especially with the relation to vaccinations, because from the Punch newspaper, we've got this one in. Enforce compulsory vaccinations for local government and state workers, federal government tells governors. Now, the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency actually has urged state governments to step up the mass vaccination against COVID-19. The article goes on to say that the percentage for fully vaccinated Nigerians, which we'd already talked about last week, Mr. C, is stalled at around 4.2%, whilst those that have taken their first dose remain at 9.8%. This as of yesterday, Sunday. Now, despite the increasing numbers of cases and deaths, some states haven't vaccinated up to 200,000 people, while Abia, Kogi, and Niger states have not commenced administration of booster shots. But hey, there's a bit of happiness on the horizon. Some of them have commenced booster shots. Imo has administered 10 whole booster shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Ebonyi
That's
administered
some progress,
52. Akwa Ibom 67, amongst others. Your thoughts?
Okay. Thank you, Chopin. So, as you've rightly stated, the backdrop to all of this is the poor rates we've recorded in Nigeria with regards to vaccination. Only 4.2% of the eligible portion of the population has been vaccinated, either 2 doses or first dose. Now, the plan of the government has always been that we will build up herd immunity. And the scientists, the researchers have consistently said to get to herd immunity,
A number of
at
people
least
have
the
a
cost of
minimum of
lives.
60% of the eligible population must be vaccinated. Now, we started this a year ago. A year later, 4.2%. Something has to give. And again, we speak to the culture, the spirit of the average Nigerian man. Unless he's compelled to do certain things, he will not do them. The vaccines have been relatively available for people who are interested in taking them, but some people simply can't be bothered. Some don't know where to find them a year after, which is really interesting.
Some have gone to places to find them, have not been able to find them.
I
mean, there are myriad issues.
No, there are myriad of issues, yes. But so here we are, and the government is.
Expired vaccines or about to expire vaccines.
So they were
Aren't you loving this, Mrs. Singh, chiming in from the chorus?
Yes. So then, like you said, there are myriad of reasons why we're still stuck at 4.2%. But beyond that, how do we move from 4.2%? Now, compulsory vaccination of workers at the federal, state, and local government levels is one way to go. And it's something we cannot run away from if we're going to get to 60%. Now, because they work for the government, they have a duty to be responsible. Now, everyone has an election, really, not to take the vaccine, and that's fine.
Okay.
But then there's a corresponding obligation that if you refuse to take it, then you cannot endanger the lives of people who have elected to take them. That is why the airports, for example, public spaces, if you do not wear a mask, you will not
Can't
be
get
allowed
in.
entry.
Yes.
Now, of course, it's your right to access a public space, but that right has to stop somewhere because the right of the next individual starts. So if they're able to get these workers to take the vaccination, the numbers will go up because, trust me, we have a lot of people working at those levels doing next to nothing. And that's where a lot of our budgets, both at federal, state, and local government levels, go to. Now, if we get that out of the way, we can continue the mass sensitization programs to get more people to sign up. And maybe we adopt the measures being used in Western Europe, in America, in North America, and South America. If you do not get vaccinated, you cannot access your local cinema. You can't access your local nightclub. You can't access your local lounge. You can't go to the stadium. Places you would love to. You can't go to your local supermarket, your local shopping mall. Maybe when that happens, Nigerians will be a bit more serious. Now, case in point, when NIN started, there was a drive to get people to register. People couldn't be bothered. But the moment they knew that they would lose access to their telephone lines if they hadn't linked them, there was an upsurge in numbers.
All right, we've got more from you. So we've got this one in from Emeka from Ikeja, who says the vaccines are available. People just don't want to take them. Whoever that claims that he or she can't get a place to get vaccinated should call me. Emeka, we've got your number. David says, correction. To get to herd immunity, 60% of the population should be immune. Immunity is acquired through vaccinations or infections. Where's the correction? But okay. Thanks for your thoughts and keep on listening. Emphasis on the word listening. Benga says, what is the logic in commencing booster shots of COVID-19 vaccines when a larger population of Nigerians haven't had a first dose? Secondly, how many of the vaccines are available? All the compulsory initiatives of the federal and state governments have fallen flat. We've got so many of your messages coming in. Do keep them coming while we get to the next story.
Okay, so let's talk about this one from the Guardian newspaper. It comes to you today. Let's talk about Wiki. So he makes a broadcast, right? Declares 19 illegal refineries and kingpins wanted. So let's go to the story, all right? Okay, so River State Governor, that's Nyesom Wike, he has declared 19 persons wanted for operating illegal crude oil refining sites responsible for suits prevalent in the state. And it goes deeper though, but what are your thoughts about this?
Okay, so it's good that this is finally getting some attention, and I say this because people, obviously people who live within the region will know this, but there is a link between this and ill health, if you understand. So personally, I have a close friend who stayed out there, and his kids constantly fell ill. Always having acute bronchitis and all of that. When they realized that, look, this problem wasn't going to go away, they decided to move out of the state.
Okay.
Right. And since then, the kids haven't been ill, right? Or at least haven't been ill from that. It is endemic, almost to say, right? In that state, it's endemic, and it seems like a lot of things are driven by illegality, right? There's so much. There's when you speak to anyone, so Wiki is correct. When you speak to anyone who lives there, they say like, look, this is driven mostly by illegal activities, illegal oil refineries, bunkering, right? So it paints that picture that it's almost everything, or I don't want to sound too gloomy, but so many things that are wrong with us are just driven by criminality.
So
and
the
then
first step is to list out.
So clean that. Well, I mean, it's Wiki style. So Wiki he's naming and shaming, right? The next step is actually to see that we can actually. It's like a hydra. It's multi-headed, right?
Okay.
You close one down, it pops up, elsewhere. There are parts of the country and the state that sometimes are difficult to properly police, but it requires attention. It's costing us a lot more, right?
Okay.
It's costing us, like I mentioned, especially in health. It's down the line that things like cancer, endemic, upper respiratory issues start to show. Now, if it was a country where, how do I say this, like government paid for healthcare, that would be another cost on a national, wage bill. But unfortunately, as it is, I mean, if
So
you're ill,
if he does shut down these refining sites, right? I mean, wouldn't it affect revenue in that state? I mean, amongst other
illegal.
things.
These are illegal.
Okay.
Illegal crowd,
Excuse me.
right?
I was just going to
These
say
are not
that-
going to the
yes,
state
of course,
coffers.
they're not going to state coffers. But then again, okay, so just in your opinion, you're saying that, name them as well and also try and do as much cleanup as possible.
They just need to go after this because it's again, speak to anyone who's there. It's driven mainly by this, illegal oil refineries. It seems like the state is proliferated by them,
Okay.
and they're just, they've dirtied the skies in a sense.
Okay.
It's quite interesting. I do remember some years ago that there was a talk of kind of trying to convert these illegal refineries into legal ones, and that would have had some.
Creative initiatives,
Yeah.
but we just never
hasn't
really do.
happened.
We never really follow through.
So just to piggyback on what Tunde has said, we have a number of illegal oil refiners, and like Shakpe has just said, why not bring them on stream? Because the existing state-owned refineries are doing next to nothing.
Nothing.
And then beyond naming and shaming, Wike is actually going to prosecute these guys. Watch this space. He's actually going to prosecute them. And he's recommended that a director in the State Ministry of Energy be handed over to the authorities because apparently he has some
collusion.
information that suggests that he's complicit in all these illegal activities.
Oh, interesting. You know what? As long as there is some sort of solution to this, because this is a health crisis. What are we, Beijing? All right, now from the Punch newspaper, federal government issues Lassa fever alert. Death toll hits 102 cases now, 4,632. So this news came in on Sunday when the Nigeria Center for Disease Control issued a fresh warning over Lassa fever cases, which it said had risen to over 4,600, and also the deaths being 102. Now, in its latest advisory, it's warned Nigerians of the possibilities of Lassa fever presenting malaria-like symptoms such as fever, headache, sore throat, general body weakness, and cough, amongst others. Now, it sent letters out to the states on the dangers of the fever and the symptoms to look out for. Now, today is quite interesting because, of course, the thing that has taken the medical issue that has taken Nigeria by storm for the past couple of years has been COVID-19. But as the conversation comes up about COVID-19, we have people saying, but Lassa fever has had such a devastating effect as well, more devastating, some would have argued.
Yeah, and it's been a constant theme that's run through, every once in a while we get reminded on, the state of Lassa fever in the country. It's just once again a reminder, like you said, that COVID is not the only thing out there. Malaria still kills more people, than that. Lassa fever, and it's important that people also point out the similarities in symptoms. So you don't, blame everything on malaria and take malaria meds, right? The other thing that I find interesting is, sort of the concentration and the breakdown. So it seems Edo State and Ondo State have by far a disproportionate amount. So in Edo State alone is over 2,700, Ondo over 1,000. So if you look at that, those two states alone account for probably close to 70% of all cases,
Okay,
or
so
above
what is
60% of all cases. Exactly.
in there we
So
have
what's
to
going
ask?
on in those states? So can we then focus on those states? I think also information is another thing that's important, and I haven't heard and not seen them. Like used to happen in the past, like campaigns. There's specific things that people can be told to sort of help prevent the spread, and a lot of it's around hygiene. Right, and we know that kind of it might be difficult in certain parts. That might also be a link into why there are it's more in certain states. So if there might be a causal link to access to clean water, for instance, so there might be a link to infrastructure, highly populated areas, people living within close quarters, can't manage hygiene, can't manage food storage properly, and a bunch of other things. But yeah, this is important, and the government
Hopefully-
should do a lot more.
Hopefully we'll be able to get more information on those numbers, because that is quite an interesting one.
I know.
Now we've got. I would like to put this out there. The NCDC has said that Lassa fever initially presents like any other febrile disease, such as malaria. Its symptoms include fever, headache, sore throat, general body weakness, cough, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle pains, chest pain, and in severe cases, unexplainable bleeding from ears, eyes, nose, mouth, and other body openings. So please do not self-diagnose yourself. If you do feel any of these symptoms, make sure you take yourself over to a hospital, get diagnosed by a medical professional, and get the right treatment.
Real quick, because we're almost out of time, a story from the Guardian newspaper talks about the also gas plan. It fails to fly ahead of the subsidy removal. Now, this comes to you, Mr. C. So last year, I think December 1st, 2020, President Buhari virtually launched the also gas initiative on the back of the National Gas Expansion Program. And, you know, the idea was 40% of vehicles plying Nigerian routes would run on compressed natural gas. But that's yet to happen. You know, it's 1 year after. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about this? What is the way forward? Is this still going to happen? You know, what's the government's plan?
Okay, so in December 2020, when this plan was announced to Nigerians, it was announced on the backdrop of the National Gas Expansion Program and proven reserves of over 400 trillion feet of gas, natural gas reserves. Now, fast forward a year later, almost next to nothing has happened, and it's no surprise. The volatility in the foreign exchange window, the harsh economic realities, improperly thought out and articulated policies, the near absence of infrastructure.
Could it be that the recession, because we've had
Could
two
it be that
recessions,
because
could
we
it
haven't
be that
been to
we've
the
had two
farm?
recessions? Farm, but the natural
Could
gas.
it be?
Okay, could it just be that the recession affected this? Because it's been a year, right? So they're saying that, hey, if this happens, you know, fuel prices will be about 95 to 97 naira. At this point, it's almost 200%.
Okay, so I will disagree with you, County, and I'll explain why. You know, this policy was improperly thought out as the answer to the removal of the fuel subsidy. Now, what is in the infrastructure required to convert already existing cars running on petrol or diesel to natural gas
Yes.
is simply not here. You have to import it. What were the plans put in place to ensure that the equipment required, the conversion kits, were readily brought in and made available all around the country? Beyond that, in the Federal Capital Territory, there are only two outfits that supply compressed natural gas or liquefied petroleum gas. Guess what? They're on the outskirts of town.
Demand and supply.
Airport Road. No, it's not a question of demand and supply. So everyone who has a car that's been converted to gas, are you supposed to drive all the way out of town?
To go and get it.
That's what I'm saying. If we got them converted, where would we get the supply from?
It was estimated then that it would cost about 250,000 or 300,000 to convert your car. That cost has easily doubled, easily. Now we have at least 12 million cars plying our roads.
So
Let's
it's
do the
not
math.
feasible in one word.
In the short term, unless something drastic changes, not feasible.
Now, so many of your messages have come in. I'll read this one in from Kwenga Akomu, who says, is it only the illegal refineries that are generating soot? What of the activities of the oil companies? The matter must be tackled holistically. All oil activities must be scrutinized. And Educate from Ogba says, oh, thank you so much for that. Welcome back. We've got more of your messages, but guess what? We also have more time on the other side of this. When Lagos Talks, we'll be reading out all your messages. Keep sending them into 0809 440 981. For now, though, it's time to say goodbye.
Yes, you can find our analysts up on social media. It's at Big Koofs. That's Tunde Koofy up on social media across all platforms. Yes,
Including the bird app, yeah.
yes, the Bird app.
If
too.
you're out of the country, yes, for sure.
And Mosia C with the triple C. Yes.
Yes, on Instagram.
On Instagram.
All right, and that's that, people. We've got Lagos Talks coming up 8:10.
First Bag.